Right, hello for the final time for my daily updates on this JOGLE trip, John Groats to Land's End. I'm now in my flat in Edinburgh. I'm terribly sorry, this should have been up like 5 days ago, but I've had a very productive / hectic 120 hours. Straight after my ride, I went to St Ives for some sightseeing and then jumped straight onto the train, 6-hour journey from Penzance to Paddington. And then when I woke up in London, staying with a friend, I went to do a bit more sightseeing around London, took the boat around the Thames, and then just saw lots of my Scottish brothers chanting and also getting drunk in the middle of North London. And I went to have dinner with my boss Benny, and then I went home Sunday, went to church, and did a bit more sightseeing. It was just around the National Gallery in London. And then Monday got my fit to fly PCR test in London, and in heavy rain, and just took the train in the afternoon back to Edinburgh, and then went out straight to have some drinks and catch up with Paul. And then yesterday was supposedly my final day before I leave back to Hong Kong. So I was very busy with packing, but then the news broke that the quarantine requirements gonna be relaxed in Hong Kong for fully vaccinated kids, aka me. I had to wait in the queue for a very, very long time for Qatar Airways just to change my tickets to a week later, when the arrangements are in place. And and then that was basically my last 5 days. So I really didn't have much chance to make this video, unfortunately. Very sorry about that. But here I am, and I've scripted everything, don't worry. So it was fresh from my brain on the 17th, or at the very least the 18th. So today's video is gonna be, firstly, the first part is going to be about an extension of day 13th. Well, I'm gonna refer it as yesterday from now on. So there are several points I want to make. Firstly is the vegetation. The bushes down south are just so much taller than what you see in Scotland. Probably because of the climate, or because farmers down south are just more wary of thieves, although I don't really know what they what is there to be stolen anyways. Lots of tall trees lining the 8 roads. That's impossible in Scotland, and a lot of epiphytes surrounding and spiraling the trunk of trees as well. And if you've played Uncharted 4, there's a place called New Devon. I think it's the absolute on point and spot on description of Devon. It was like really rich in vegetation and all of the epiphytes, tall bushes and stuff. Make sure to check that game out. I really love that game. The second point I wanted to make about yesterday was there are many hills in Devon, and I thought at one point I was riding into heaven, but in fact I was just riding deeper into hell, with some more steep and dramatic inclines waiting for me ahead. And that was the point when I realized what the phrase "digging deep" means. It was funny. I was on the verge of collapsing. Well, of course I kept eating, that's why I didn't. I was feeling that I was dropping deeper and deeper into the hole towards hell. But then that is where you find the sort of extra strength and extra boost to your motivation. That is until you're deep in trouble and pain and agony. that you finally realize what you can do, and you get that extra strength, and then just to continue on, carry on, keep going. And yeah, I think that's what digging deep means. You really have to experience a sort of hopelessness and the sort of being destroyed until before you can really find that sort of extra strength or know what you really are capable of. And the last point I wanted to make was about yesterday was I was riding along the hills and in Devon, and then I saw another series of hills, yeah, parallel to me or anything, or maybe they were just the sort of hills that I climbed before. And that was a very philosophical moment. There was like a story about Zhuangzi, old Chinese philosopher, who kind of dreamt about a butterfly, but then he woke up and wasn't sure about if he dreamt about the butterfly or was he the butterfly that dreamt about him. So yeah, that was a very moment when you kind of cannot distinguish between reality or the dream, because you've obviously been so spent. Well, yeah, that's philosophical, or I might just have been delusional or schizophrenic. Yeah, so right, probably should get back onto today's ride. Today started off quite well, or actually no, I missed the alarm. Yeah, because I arrived at the Eagle House in Launceston at like probably near 10, when the sun is almost set. And yeah, so I finished dinner and stuff, and it was already like 1 or 2 a.m. And making the video as well. So yeah, I missed the alarm. But the breakfast, the Cornish breakfast in the Eagle House in Launceston is absolutely brilliant. The hash browns were just on point. Bacons were crisp and crispy, sorry. And yeah, it was just very lovely. But yeah, again, I made a mess of packing. Well, I mean, I'll stop using that phrase now, because I think that is the true pace of me packing up. But yeah, it was already 11 when I finished packing, and then when I was about to set off, I realized the rear brake just wasn't quite right. So the arm connected to the wire doesn't retract to its original position after the brake lever has been released. So when you press onto the brake lever, there's like some sort of cable slack, unusual amount of cable slack in it. And then when you release the brake lever, that arm of the dual pivot brake doesn't return to its original position. So yeah, in short, it's just something wrong with the rear brake, and I didn't know how to solve it. I tried many things, but apparently it's just it's just too tight for the mounting bolt onto the frame, but I did not try that. But yeah, probably some repercussions of the crash, and yeah, I just gave up trying and set up the brake in a way such that there's minimum pushing to one side when pressing down on the brake lever, so that the wheel wouldn't be out of true for too much. But yeah, it took a very long time, and when I finally started to get going, it was already like 1 p.m. So that probably killed off my chance of riding to Land's End today. So yeah, today the original plan was to cycle around 120 kilometers from Launceston to Penzance with 1,200 meters of climbing, and yeah, with the option of extending it to Land's End depending on the time. But otherwise, I would just have, you know, pop down to Land's End, not London, Land's End on the following day. Yeah, on paper, another tough old day. I didn't really check the wind anymore. I've given up. It probably is headwinds all the way. But yeah, wise choice finally. But yeah, I got going, and that is probably a bit much on setting the scene now. Oh, it's 10 minutes already. I haven't even started talking about the ride. But yeah, let's start, shall we? So I was riding out of Launceston, and I was immediately greeted with a very, very, very steep and long climb. I don't know why, but Cornish and Devonian towns, Crediton, Ockhampton, Launceston, those sort of towns just seem to be built on top of hills, presumably to get more wind. I don't know, but yeah, it's just really, really tough getting into and out of those towns, and yeah, and starting from I think Devon, the sort of red brick structures, houses, you get a lot down along, well, probably the whole of England, just suddenly disappeared and replaced by white and wider houses. Yeah, so I climbed out of Launceston. To give you an idea how steep that was, I probably did about a sixth of the climbing. Right, 200 over, yes, sixth of the climbing in the first 2 kilometers out of Launceston, and then a 10%, no, 20% of the climbing of the day after 10 kilometers. So it's really, really steep. And yeah, unfortunately, as I've mentioned before, the vegetations are like, the bushes are quite tall down south, so I didn't catch too much on camera. But Cornish green hills seem to be a continuation of Devonian green hills. They're really impressive. Probably the most beautiful I've ever seen across the whole of England. Of course, nothing compares to the sort of landforms in Scotland. And right, yeah. The main reason I had to do this sort of jumping around on country roads, and yeah, that was the country road I rode out of Launceston, B something something, and also to take some detour. So I did not go southwest all the way from Launceston to Penzance, but rather I did take like a westerly route before going south, and then rejoining the road to Penzance. Was because most part of the A30, which is like a continuation of the M5, across the whole of Devon and deep into Cornwall, were dual carriage A-ways. I don't know why Google Maps would route me onto them, but they were like really busy. A road, dual carriageway. Yeah, so I had to avoid them altogether and had to take all the twists and turns along the way. So yeah, after climbing out of Launceston, I turned onto the A39, and when I finally checked the wind certainly picked up from midday yesterday, and it was a probably northwest, is that called that way, wind along the way, and it was like 20 miles per hour, so pretty gusty and pretty strong. But yeah, I was just Cornish drivers seems to love close passes more than Devonian drivers, or maybe the road was just a lot busier. But I was grateful because it was basically that means I was riding southwest, and then the wind was blowing from the northwest, so it was pretty much a right angled crosswind. So yeah, I absolutely love the close passes because they're essentially creating a shield for me away from the wind, pretty much very, very effective. And so yeah, I found it a lot easier today despite the climbing and the wind, probably because of the close passes or because I found that extra gear by digging deep yesterday. But anyways, road were okay, I think. I can't remember anymore. But yeah, it was quite pleasant, and I reached a point on the top of the hill when I could just see the green hills literally rolling into the sea. And it was really, really amazing. I took some pictures and videos as well, which should be up, I don't know when. But yeah, so when I thought I expertly avoided all the dual carriage A30, which I really did for most part, I took some part of very narrow and steep country lanes with tractors in the way as well, and took like a very, very windy path past part of the A30. But yeah, I thought I did that expertly, avoided all the dual carriage A30 sections. But yeah, suddenly I was on the roundabout, and after that it was another section of A30 dual carriageway. So it was, I would be lying if I said I wasn't by the slightest intimidated. But yeah, it was nice road surface, and there weren't too many close passes because the cars were traveling at like 60 miles per hour, and they probably know it's quite dangerous to close past you. But yeah, it's a very high pressure environment, and after I think 5-10 kilometers, I thought to myself, yeah, I've had enough, and then turn off the next slip road onto the A30-47, something like that. And I must say I was impressed. There was a section where there were like dedicated cycle lanes on this not very busy, but I assume quite important A road. It was really well paved, and yeah, it's just really enjoyable. But after that, it just turned back onto normal crappy A roads. I suspect I didn't have too much to say about that stretch of road because I've had that getting over the line mentality for the whole of today, and I was just yeah, taking off the kilometers one by one, and then just trying to get to Penzance, and yeah, so nothing too spectacular or special or remarkable along that stretch of road. Certainly horrible roads, but yeah, I finally rejoined the A30, probably single carriageway, two-way traffic, 20 miles out of Penzance, and was just all the way to Penzance. But yeah, I thought I lost the chance of going to Land's End today because of how long it took me to get the brakes going again. Well, I did not exactly sort that out. But yeah, when I arrived at Penzance, I thought, well, firstly, it was really, really windy down there in the port, and onshore wind as well. But yeah, I saw the sun was still up and the day was probably still quite young. So yeah, I thought to myself, screw it, I'm just going to Land's End. I checked in at my hotel, a B&B for the night, put down 1 or 2 bags and some stuff, and I just set off going to Land's End. Yeah, perfectly unplanned, but yeah, I've got the route anyways. But yeah, I didn't take Patrick's word seriously or literally when he said Land's End is a bit of a pain to get to. It was certainly really, really hilly for me. Luckily for me, I've got the bags, well, one saddle pack unloaded. So yeah, it was much, much easier for me to get up the hills. But the road, the wind was just horrible, really, really strong. and the GPS doesn't seem to be working too well around that area past Penzance as well. My Garmin kept telling me that I've lost my satellite, and yeah, probably a bit messed up with the distance down there. But yeah, you know, surprisingly or unexpectedly, I caught the sunset because I just decided to push on to Land's End, and it was absolutely beautiful down there. And yeah, 20 k's in, I think, and lots of climbing. I finally reached the Land's End. Yeah, I'll have videos about that later. So yeah, that is that. I've completed the journey, and I've caught a very beautiful sunset. And yeah, to be fair, it didn't feel too satisfactory, or satisfying when I arrived. But these few days, when it started to sink in, I finally started to realize literally how far I've come, both for this journey and with my life. And it was that moment. Of course, I took pictures and videos, but yeah, it's just an incredible feeling. I never intended for this trip to be any sort of inspiration, but people I've met since going to Land's End or seem to be very interested in doing this sort of journey. Good for you. A very good self-discovery process. And yeah, I didn't stay for too long in Land's End because it was absolutely chilly, very windy, and the sun was setting. So yeah, it wasn't until I've come to the UK when I started to appreciate the importance of windproof garments, because it's you can lose a lot of temperature really, really quickly, even though the air temperature wasn't too low in a very windy environment. So yeah, I popped my wind jacket on and then caught the last bit of dusk light and cycled back to Penzance. And yeah, by the time I finished dinner, it was already 1 a.m., something like that. That's why I've procrastinated until today to do this video. Well, I didn't really have time in between the end of the journey to now. It wasn't until I changed my flight to next week when I finally have the time to do this. But yeah, thank you very, very much for your company for the past 2.5 weeks. And thoroughly enjoyed myself. Probably need some time back home in quarantine just to let everything sink in. And yeah. Oh, and recovery is really important. I kind of experimented with not eating enough after the final day of riding, and instead of my usual pint of milk as a recovery drink, I had a pint of Guinness just to celebrate a bit. And I did not do any stretching or foam rolling as well. And yeah, I woke up the next day feeling really, really shattered, really shit. Yeah, legs are really sore and just nowhere near as energetic as the previous 13 days. So yeah, recovery is really important. And yeah, thank you again for tuning in for the past 2 weeks. And please stay tuned. Like and subscribe to my channel for cuts of the several terabytes of footage I've taken throughout this journey, and also previous trips that I've done as well. So yeah, until then, see you guys.